All right, we'll jump to WPD, Officer Malloy.
Hey, you guys are muted, so I just heard Officer Malloy, so I'm gonna start talking. So community policing across the city is officially been cut in half, so we just got our new assignments. So we're still figuring out all the beat assignments and getting to know our new beats. So that's going well. Let's see, out east, I just got the stats here. Patrol East. So it looks like violent crime, murders and homicides are down for the year compared to this time last year, but aggravated assaults are up a little bit this time. We're also seeing an increase in larcenies and larcenies from vehicles in particular. So we really just probably hearing the same old thing, but don't leave valuable stuff in your cars and really lock them up. A lot of people are leaving valuable stuff in their cars unlocked, and you know, these car thieves are just going around and checking doors, and they find car keys or they find anything valuable, they're just going to take everything. So we're really asking people not to do that. Tomorrow night we've got their neighborhood night out. So all the community policing officers across the city will be out in the neighborhoods, saying hi to everybody at the neighborhood meetings, and I'm sure Councilmember Johnson and others will probably be out. So hopefully it's not too hot and we make it through that okay. Let's see. I really think that's about it. Not much is going on. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions, I guess?
Any questions from the data for Officer Malloy?
Are we expecting years and fires stats from the 4th of July here next month? Just sort of the readout on citations or folks hurt, any of that sort of stuff.
Sorry, I missed this. In regards to what?
The 4th of July?
Will you have the report out for 4th of July next month?
I don't know anything about, well, you're asking about fireworks citations?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if the fire department will have that or not. I know with the laws being changed this year, they didn't do the firework enforcement like they had in the past. So that might be a fire question. But I'll ask around and see if we get an answer from our department.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from the public? And all right. Thank you, Officer Malloy.
Of course, have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
All right, I don't see fire jumping back on, so we can go on to Park and Rec. That was all handed to us. All right, Park and Rec report should be in your packet. You review that. Looks like the library report is as well. We do have Sean from Public Works here, so we'll jump into the Public Works report.
United States Design Engineer for the city. I'm just gonna highlight more or less the things that have changed for the most part. So if you have any questions about anything from the past or anything you think might be coming, let me know. 2023 pavement preservation, just gonna go through the list of projects here. Asphalt overlay on Woodlawn from 13th to 21st, repairs to begin late August. Micro surfacing, the pavement repairs have been complete and they will come back and do the micro in September. So if we have pavement repairs, it's kind of rough out there. They are coming back and doing some micro where they've done those pavement repairs. Preservation seals are in progress. That's hillside between 27th and 37th Street North, all over from 21st to 25th on 21st Street from all over to Woodlawn, hydraulic from Mount Vernon to Harry. Crack seals in residential areas will resume late third quarter. For crosswalk repairs, 21st and Hyatt is complete and Herring Green is complete. Concrete street repairs, Southeast Boulevard from Harry to Washington and residential streets. Gonna have to look at the map online, and they may include a map in your packet, but if you have any questions about those, there's too many for me to go through. And if I did, I'd go through them so fast you wouldn't hear half of them more. Localized repairs, so isolated pavement issues, Murdoch from Yale to Roosevelt, Douglas from Waco to McLean, Lewis from Maple to Wadham. Jeff Dry Lewis, ribbon cutting is scheduled for September 16th. Projects and design, Brewer Community Center, floodplain adjustment, has been sent into FEMA. We're waiting for some communication back and forth. Sounds like that's already been done once, so we're hoping we should get that hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Once they get that, they can actually start looking after some of that stuff's complete. Construction documents are complete. Plans have been submitted to MABCD for review, and construction is currently estimated to start in early quarter 4, 2023. Blackley, having a design consultant on that project, let's look at some further evaluation to reduce the thresholds that we originally put on it for a couple different reasons. And as part of that, there's supplemental design agreement going to City Council on August 2nd. 15th Street Bridge design is ongoing. We've seen some preliminary stuff from the design consultant. So I would guess it should be coming, the design concept should be coming to DAB in September or October. St. Francis and Commerce went to Design Council on July 10th. Prior to this meeting today, we met with the neighborhood to run through the art design. It was the Design Council. Feedback was they had a number of questions. No, I don't think they had any issues with the art based on the commentary that I heard. They had some questions about some different locations and some of just the overall concept of how some of it's going to be lit, locations on where it would be relative to some of the visibility, some of the things. So we will take that back to Design Council here in a month or 2, and then go to City Council shortly thereafter for approval. Design. Rock Park, and concept to stakeholder group. 6 concepts received and provided to 17th Street. We said one thing here, it's not on the actual list. We've seen some concepts, so again, I think it probably comes to district site. We do it September, October, and then 17th Street between I-135 side. Multimodal facility application submitted for carbon reduction program. 1.7 from DOT, the obligated funds through WAMPO. 90% plans were submitted June 19th. 100% plans will be submitted August 16th. Dirt streets, I'm here to talk about tonight, so I'm not going to go through those. K96, I think the only thing that's changed between I-135 and 21st Street. As far as the list goes, the only thing that shows up to be different is getting that project, and it's 26, 27. And I'm guessing it's going to depend upon utilities right away, and probably where we're at on East Catalog too. All that being taken consideration on whether start construction. The North Junction, the accelerated gold phase is completed. Gold phase 2B is currently under construction. The I-135 bridge beams have been placed for the new southbound bridge. I-135 flyover to eastbound K96. Those are the items I wanted to hit on. Any questions or comments, thoughts?
Any questions from DAB? Seeing none, any questions from the public? Seeing none. Thank you. Let's see, we are on item 6. I will turn the meeting over to our chair, Tex.
Apologies, was delayed. It was on a video call I couldn't be driving on. Item number 6, or that's right, we changed it up and do the board agenda updates now, correct?
Yep.
So, I'll kick it off and just say, that you can right now, especially with National Night Out being tomorrow night, go to the nonprofit chamber and get, you can get fentanyl testing kits as well as Narcan that they are distributing so that you can pass out at your neighborhood events so that they can be accessible. And I believe I was going to reach out to them to see if they're also providing those for folks to pass out at their organizations as well, youth groups, et cetera, just because of the really terrible impact that's having on our community. And so I encourage you to take advantage of that resource, especially ahead of tomorrow's event.
Not too many updates on my end. It's too dang hot to have too many updates, or it's been too hot. Only thing I'll lift is that our local Planned Parenthood clinic has reopened its patient allies or patient escorts, as they were previously called. That program started back here soon, and so if you are interested, you can touch base with their local community manager.
Well, I just always like the District 1 breakfast on Saturday mornings and really like it. And then USD 259 has a parent teacher resource center open to, if you're involved in 259, and you can make buttons for 35 cents. And so I made our buttons for 20 for us to go out for a neighborhood night out. Anyway.
If you have any updates or anything, we have a new DAB member. I'd like you to introduce yourself.
I'm Mary Beth Yarnell. I live in the community country overlook.
We're happy to have you.
Thank you. I'm delighted for the opportunity to be here.
Wanda.
Okay, July 22nd, we had Sunset Summerfest Music in the Park. We got all the way to the last, the performer, and the rain came. But they have agreed to come back. So Saturday, September 2nd, Labor Day weekend, McAdams Park, we're gonna do Sunset Summerfest Part 2. And we're gonna call it, this one's gonna be a tribute to the arts. So we're looking for artists that wanna come out and bring their paintings or whatever artistic thing they may have. And we're also looking for vendors this time. You can reach me, just easy, lawanda.deshazer@gmail.com. Or look me up on Facebook, or you can look up Diane Hoy Webb on Facebook and just contact us. And we used to do it big at McAdams Park, and so we're gonna try and do a little something this year. So if you're interested, just reach out to me. We would love to have you. Second, Labor Day weekend, and Men at Large will be back.
We have a returning member, Joseph.
I don't have any updates, but just want to introduce myself and reintroduce myself to those I know. I'm Joseph Shepard. I moved back to District 1 a little over a year ago. I recently resided in District 3, which is just right over the highway there. It's funny how that works, but I'm excited to be back in District 1 and look forward to learning from all of you all and offering my insight that I can provide.
Abby. Bill.
Yes, Hunter's Journey Family Therapy is accepting clients. So if you know anyone who's interested in some therapy services, Ranisha Hunter is the owner, and she specializes in individual, couple, family, and professional women therapy. So if you know anyone, you can reach her, find her on psychologytoday.com or huntersjourneyfamilytherapy.com. And I also wanted to highlight Equity Initiative, which is a nonprofit organization. They recently just launched their campaign, and they're bringing awareness to having high quality after school programs in our community. And they also provide free tutoring, which will start August 23rd. So in 2 Wednesdays. And it's for middle school and high school youth, and it is free.
Thank you. Katie and Michaela.
I just want to say August is back to school for most everybody. So good luck to everybody going back to school, whether you're teaching or students or have parents and you're sending little ones off.
Okay, Gail? We can go back to Michaela if you need to update us later. I want to welcome the new members here. For those if you haven't been to a DAB meeting before, District 1 can have some very robust dialogue, and some of our meetings can go a bit long depending on the agenda. It's a nice agenda for your initial back, Joseph. So thank you all for your service and dedicating the time, as well as I think all the members here recognize the time that you then dedicate outside of these meetings, just being the representative, keeping your ears and your eyes open within your communities and in your neighborhoods, and bringing that wisdom and knowledge and feedback back to your fellow DAB members and the council. Thank you all. All right, so I'm gonna get council's update then.
Yeah, I like the way this new schedule is. Board member updates before all the other stuff. Let's see, I've got a few. First, I do want to welcome Joseph back and Mary Beth. Thank you for joining the DAB. Hope you all have a good time. Joseph has been a part of close to the midnight meeting stuff, so hopefully we won't have too many of the midnight meetings. But like Tex said, this is a wonderful group of folks to talk through issues of community and get a lot of opinions out. So glad to have you all on the District Advisory Board. I will start with something fun for tomorrow, neighborhood night out. I know some of you have already talked to Tasha, but I hope as many as can join us. This is my first time following in my predecessor's footsteps, and we'll have a vehicle. We can all ride together. Just get ready for fast pace. We've got 14 to hit, and we'll probably be at each one 10 to 15 minutes. So as you see all the food that will be out there that the neighbors are preparing, just know that that's about 1.5 plates, and everyone wants you to eat something. So hopefully you are hungry. But it will be fun. The Chief of Police will be joining us tomorrow for most of that, as well as Deputy Chief Duff, I believe. So that'll be fun. We'll be meeting here. We're getting started 5:15, 5:30. So make sure you come to Atwater. We'll load up, go out and have some fun. And Tasha will navigate us there successfully. But we will try to hit as many as possible. It's always fun to get out and talk to people in their neighborhoods and see what's going on. Other than that, we as a council, I don't know who all attended the public meeting for Evergy's rate hike with the Kansas Corporation Commission. I attended that. I saw our mayor was there and Councilmember Fry. We as a council talked on Tuesday, and I had heard that the local government could submit a response. I requested that we do that. Seemed to have unanimous support on that. We are working towards submitting a letter against the requested hike for a number of reasons. So our team is working on that now. I don't know when that will be ready, but we will all review it and vote on it publicly. It will be a resolution to send that to Evergy. So we are doing that. Also tentatively, just because I don't have the confirmation email, but I know a lot of people are interested, the Evergy 30% meeting for the Redbud Trail is tentatively scheduled for September 26th. I believe it will be at the Metroplex. I don't have a time just yet, but that is the tentative heads up I got, so I wanted to make sure you all got that. Also, we had our evening budget meeting. As I have said several times in neighborhood meetings, we'll have 10 to 20 people show up and we will hear them. And we had about 20 people show up, and most of them were talking about Cowtown. And we heard some funding requests for Cowtown and support for Cowtown. But again, we try to have that evening meeting. It is the only item on the agenda is to talk about the budget. So as you can see, if you go back and watch, we tend to engage a little more, but that's the only item that we have. And it is an opportunity to be heard. So if you are someone or you know folks who feel like they aren't being heard by us as a council, please pay attention to future evening meetings. We do that once a year for the budget. Our final budget vote is August 22nd. We have changed that from a consent meeting to a full meeting on the budget. Also, August 22nd, at the moment, scheduled is a workshop on the housing policy. Vice Mayor Hoheisel and I have been working on to present to the public and the rest of the council, the ideas and suggestions that we would like to see to make sure people have decent living opportunities in the city. So pay attention, tune in to that. Workshops are not a space where public has comment, but it is a space for you to hear, one, what's being proposed, and two, those of us who will say something, what we're thinking about at that time. So that's August 22nd. That will be a regular scheduled meeting at 9 o'clock instead of 9:30. Talked about neighborhood night out. We have some cool opportunities here at Atwater. The Hope Net Getting Ahead program will be starting here. I had a chance to go to their graduation ceremony last year. It's pretty moving, pretty powerful to see folks who have put their mind together to do better, to learn some new skills, and get involved in community. And in fact, one of the individuals who graduated has continued to volunteer at several community organizations and events, and I see him everywhere. So that's a great program. They're going to get started here at Atwater this month, thanks to the work that Tasha did. And that is really exciting. And then lastly, just a few things, council meeting wise. I know this goes out in the newsletter, but if you don't have it, you should definitely sign up. You can talk to Tasha about signing up about that. We approved a facade program or a facade improvement project for 2320 East Douglas, which is Douglas and Grove. That projected project looks pretty cool. That developer has been doing some really good work on facades downtown and in this area, so looking forward to that. We approved a letter of intent to issue IRBs at Spirit for the Air Capital Flight Line. So an IRB is an incentive. So if you see that in the paper, it was a $60 million project. We're not giving them $60 million. They're spending their own $60 million. What they do get is a sales tax break and a property tax break for up to 10 years. They have a 5-year review. If they pass that, they'll get another 5 years on that. We also approved an ordinance on impounding vehicles involved in human trafficking, placing the focus on those who purchase sex and not on the actual sex worker. Oftentimes, women have been targeted in this, and they are being forced into that through trafficking or pimps or anyone else forcing them to go have sex for money. Now the people who are buying the sex will be targets. Your first instance, you can lose, you can have your vehicle impounded for 72 hours. If you get caught again, it's 20 days. And after that, I think it continues to escalate up. So we did pass that. We also approved the MOU for the biomedical campus downtown. It was always hard to not tell people, but it will be in District 1. So District 1 continues to be the best district in the city. Keep getting the good stuff. Looking forward to that. That's going to have a major impact downtown, just like what we're seeing with Kansas Com is doing already. Talked about the August 22nd meeting. And Sean talked about the Brewer Center. So really looking forward to FEMA, hopefully speeding up the saying yes on the floodplain. Once they do that, council has pretty much approved everything else. We can break ground and get started on that building. That's something I can't wait to see happen. We also approved site selection for 2 new fire stations in West Wichita. If you've heard anything from me or my concerns with fire, it's been that the west side of town has a lot of significant gaps, and I still feel until we get those built that we are one special situation away from pretty bad stuff happening. So looking forward to getting this going. This is addressing some of that gap. We still have some more work to do, but we're making some progress, at least with that, and hiring new firefighters. And I guess the last thing of note is we have approved the loan with the state of Kansas for the wastewater treatment plant. Always like to bring that up because Vice Mayor Hoheisel had been really pushing to make some adjustments to ensure that smell goes away. So because of his efforts on that committee and working through that, 98% of what you might smell on a 109-degree day will go away. And it should be some relief to all the folks in South Wichita and anyone where that breeze may blow that smell. So I am excited about that as well. So with that, I know that was a lot. Happy to take any questions from Dab or the public.
It's about after Chief. So the KCC meeting, folks can still submit public comment for that, right? Because the meeting itself is the 27th, but I think they said something about still submit comments online. I guess, opposing or in for rate. Is that still the case, or am I misremembering?
That I don't know. Once I heard that it was my job that day with the kids, so I took the kids out of there. That meeting is on YouTube. I have shared that. I can go back and look and see. But I think at any point, their contact information's on there. You should definitely submit how you feel. If it's in that time period, they'll have it.
And then, have you received word of how Evergy is gonna be sending out, information about that Redbud Trail meeting? Cause, I know that's been something that's been a frustration for folks along the trail in the past.
It should go door to door. We usually try to get a door hanger and a letter goes out. I know the letter will go out. I'm not sure on the door hanger. We can find out.
Will that be just properties along the trail or like a certain radius off of it?
Probably just the properties on the trail.
Okay.
Other comments or questions for council member from Dow?
What was that? Was it a policy or about the sex trafficking? Is there somewhere we can read more on that?
Yeah, it was an ordinance, so we passed that. What day was that? July.
But it'll be online. I can go and look it up.
Yeah, actually, it was August 1st. So yeah, if you just go to the city website, you can find that packet item, and on there will be the actual ordinance language.
Is that language similar to the marijuana ordinance language where you're directing local police and the local courts? Is that what it is? Round or?
It was based on an ordinance in Oklahoma City that I did not look at. But it would allow us to impound that vehicle, so WPD would be able to, and then you'd have to pay to get that out. And then court wise, it probably would empower municipal court.
Was there a clarification at that Evergy meeting? The last staff meeting, there was some confusion around disparate and unequal rate hikes, depending on the cities and counties. Did they bring that up, clarify that at all during that meeting?
Yeah, and very technical language. What I took from it was they were equalizing us versus Northeast Kansas because there were price breaks we were getting that have expired. And the rate or the rates were charged differently per type of user, differently than Northeast. Honestly, it sounded more like KCP&L had a certain way that wasn't like Evergy and or like Westar, and they're trying to make everything like KCP&L rather than like Westar was.
Maybe there was, it was brought up at the meeting because I said, but that certain folks, like schools and then churches might see a higher increase in residential. And so they're like, all right, those folks, depending on how folks are zoned or what they're classified as, their rate could go up, say 20%, 18%, whereas residential would go up that was 9.77% that was quoted a lot. Not a lot of detail beyond that.
Yeah. My biggest concern is a grace period if someone misses picking the plan. Because if they're then locked in for the next year, that could be pretty catastrophic for a nonprofit or a church. 20%. And I imagine there's still ample time to get comment. The city's still putting forward y'all's statement. There's still time for the debt. Another comment.
Yep.
DAB members online, any questions or comments for council member or public?
No comments, no questions.
None.
Members of the public, any questions or comments for council member John? Man, feel free to speak in there or come up to the podium if you want, whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay, thank you. Couple things if I could. I'm new here. I come from District 3, and the smell. I'm new to the neighborhood as well. So I just moved here. I heard wonderful things about Tasha.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful, lovely things that I should introduce myself and get to know you. And the counseling service you referenced, Hunter Journey. Is it
Journey
private,
Family Therapy.
private practice?
Yes.
Okay, so do you know what type of insurance they pay?
I'm not sure on that. If you go to the website, I'm sure it lists it for
Okay.
you, and I can provide you the email. address.
No, I can look it up.
Okay.
Thank you. Also, when is city council going to, will they consider changing their meetings to evening hours? For day working from?
So, probably my first or second council meeting when I got elected, I started bringing that up, and I was always told it won't change the turnout. It's only 10 to 12 people that may show up. And
Unless there's a hot button issue.
outside of the baseball meeting, it's been less than 20 or less, yeah. So just the regular meetings, I don't know that it will change, just for that.
So what can be done, what can citizens do to activate the change?
The biggest thing is to show up at least at that night meeting on the budget. That was my main push after hearing that. I said, one of the most important things we do as a council is vote on the budget. Can we at least do that one at night? And we've been doing it at night since 2019. Actually, I think we did it in 2018. But since then, we've been doing it, and it's just that same turnout. That's why every time I go to neighborhood association meetings in June and July, I bring up that date, I say be there, and try to ask people to talk about what they care about. And, you know, a lot of times it's random, but honestly, if it wasn't for the Cowtown group, which I believe was 10 or 11 of those speakers, we only would have had 5 or 6 citizens show up. So if we can pack that one out, it makes the argument to keep doing it.
Sure.
But if not, then that's for me, so I'm elected. I really don't care if I'm there that late, but when we have our staff members that are there from 7:30 to 8 in the morning until whenever that meeting might be done, if it's not really changing the folks who are turning out, I mean, it allows people an opportunity to watch the meeting live when they get off. But we need more bodies to be in the room in that evening meeting. And that's the one with the budget that I would think we would hear most about, especially if we're proposing good things or bad things. This year, we're adding $250,000 to MABCD, which finally is allowing us to do more against blight. But
What is that?
MABCD, Metropolitan Area Building.
Oh, is that at the corner of 9th and, no, MABD, I'm thinking the wrong one.
Well, MABCD is joint city and county, and their offices are in the Ronald Reagan Building.
Okay,
The last two is construction department, but it's that and MAPD, Metro Area Planning Department. But we increased the budget to MABCD. And that's the one when District 1 and 3 have the highest, when you have those abandoned homes that are boarded up or should be, and you have like fire damage and all that. They just sit there because we haven't historically had enough money to quickly deal with that. This will help us out, and a lot of neighborhood presidents have complained about that as well. So now we're trying to do something about it. We've added staff there. So hopefully we can see some changes for neighborhoods.
thank you. Also, I've heard wonderful things about your support of Bill
Oh,
Heisel from him.
yeah, he's great.
He thinks that of you as well.
No, he's awesome. He's been doing everything he promised. When he said he cared about people, he would come in and he tries to do his best. He takes on any issue. He listens to anyone. I've seen him on the phone with someone not happy with him holding his son, and they're just talking and he's walking
And
around.
he drinks Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, he does. And I like to mess with him and take it in the morning and hide those, but no, Vice Mayor Hoheisel's great. I'm glad he got elected. I think he's doing a great job, and I think he's doing a good job in District 3.
So on the water department, so just so I'm clear, the smell in South, the new water. Okay, so I'm sure I'm confused, but the new system that's going in out west, right?
It's two different things.
Two different things, right? And the south one is different than the
West,
west
yeah.
one. What is the south one and what is the west one? And
So-
how will each one affect?
The west one, you can think of what you drink and shower in, and the south one is what goes down the toilet.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Before that.
Yeah. Before and after.
And now that you've said something else, what's happening on 17th Street here? Is it resurfacing?
No, 17th Street between Grove and 135 is gonna be a complete reconstruction. The section between Grove and Hillside would be restriping. We would look at restriping it to a 3-lane with on-street bike lanes, like the rest of the corridors through that
Oh,
area,
okay,
all the way from Broadway to all of them.
okay. I was at a community meeting fairly recently and bike paths in this district were brought up.
The traffic volumes don't need the 4-lane. We do have to widen the section between Grove and 135 to be able to get the bike lanes in there, but in general, the 4-lane is just not needed. The section between Grove and 135 is really narrow and it's really bad shape.
Okay,
Section between Grove and Hillside was redone about 10, 15 years ago.
okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
One last thing I did forget, those interested in 29th and Grove, the contamination. We should have a public meeting next month that will have a whole lot of good information. We've been working behind the scenes with our FQHCs, community clinics, Grace Med, Health Corps, Hunter, Guadalupe. There is some good news in the medical society as well, and Kansas Health Foundation. So looking forward to sharing that once we get all the rest of the details figured out. So that notification will go out. And there will be a number of ways that's communicated out, door knocking, flyers, letters, as much as we can do. And a survey door to door will happen to see how many wells are in the area that are not registered. We can't put our hats and say that there's only 16 wells when there's never been a door to door survey in that area. So that will come out. That meeting will happen probably towards the end of September. So at the September DAB meeting, I'll let you know the date and time for that. And if you want to help us get the word out, happy to have your help as well. But Commissioner Beatty and I will be really busy hitting as many organizations and churches as possible once we get all that set. So you'll probably see us in multiple places.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for bringing those questions. I would say another way, if you can't make those meetings, is you're always welcome, especially seeing how you were tight and good communication with Hoheisel, to reach out to not just Councilmember Johnson, but each of the council members and provide written comment that can be included in the agenda as well for the council members to review.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I think that the challenge is, I imagine, the evening budget meeting, is it just a newspaper announcement or something like that at most, typically for the evening?
Yeah, newsletter, social media, newspaper, all of us who go to the neighborhood meetings to say it.
Yeah, I always wonder if it's just more because there's just not that expectation of having the evening meeting. I know, I understand the concern of resources and staff. People just, it's just not on their radar because of that, even if there are announcements. If there is that habit of having every other meeting or one meeting every, something like that, I could see how that could maybe improve it.
Well, some of it is apathy. There's a certain group or subsect of our city that believes we're just gonna do what we want anyway.
Yeah.
And rather than trying to see if that's true or not, just believe it, which, you know, I get it. So that's why I just try to tell as many people as possible. But when you do show up, there is some movement, unless it's like a huge item or a huge number you need, like Cowtown, I think that number was 60 to 75,000. That may end up happening. So it just depends on what it is and showing up.
Speaking of a huge item, I was out of town, so I haven't had a chance to review both that averaging meeting as well as the budget meeting. Were there initial numbers or thoughts or solutions on the police officer gap and maybe pay and incentives for recruitment? Because that seems like to be a big ticket item, obviously with cost and trying to fill that gap. What was any initial discussions around that?
No, there was no discussion at that meeting about that really, or at least ideas wise. Other than that, there's some competing thoughts, increased wages and benefits versus doing nothing on culture, or increase wages and benefits and have a conversation about how do you change culture. And I've kind of talked with FOP about both. Like, if we look at that, yes, we're down nearly 100 officers. That is significant. But also, do we have the type of culture where our own officers are recruiting people into the department? Because I haven't seen that in some time. And a lot of the officers I talk to are not, and they just see the department as different issues that aren't being addressed. And they all say the wages and benefits make a difference. It would help with retention somewhat, but also until some of the internal things change, they're not gonna, actively recruit people into the department. And I think that's the biggest difference we see now versus 10 years ago. Even when we were down officers, you had officers that loved the department enough to try to get folks in, or if recruits were in the academy, they would try to keep them there and talk about how much they love the job and what they do. And that's not as prevalent today.
Sort of a philosophical question, but about changing cultures so this is of course not based on WPD stats, but California has a law that allows for greater transparency into what police are spending their time on. And in some parts of Southern California, most of the time was spent doing traffic stops and not issuing citations. The actual responding to calls was a single-digit percentage of what they do. And so I'm just wondering if there's, on the note of changing the culture, because I work in nonprofits, we're usually paid quite little, but you don't stick around you stick around because the work you're doing is good. And so has there been conversations about the philosophy of what the police do and changing that job too? Because we can pay folks all day, but if they're ultimately not doing the work that they think that they're supposed to be doing, serving the community.
Yeah, I think that conversation's ongoing internally. I've heard some of it. As far as percentages of work, I'd have to go see if that study was done, but I hear about some of the work that they do. And a lot of the burnout right now is just with the lack of officers. They've been going call to call for a number of years now. I got elected into that, and I saw it in 2018, just riding with an officer when the situation happened. They had 3 screens full of calls, and we were trying to deal with one. And this captain was trying to organize all of North Wichita and all the other calls they had. So, that's how you get to burnout, when you don't really have a chance to truly engage with the citizen, resolve the situation, because you've got 20 to 30 more calls you need to get to. And those folks are waiting. I think we've seen response times on traffic probably increase a bit as well, even though we have a different traffic unit. We don't have enough of them. So, all of that I think has to be talked about and addressed.
The question is more than just philosophical, especially, I don't know if there's the resources to look at the data. With what the DAB heard was pretty frustrating to many DAB members of the transition from community policing to patrol. And so now that transition's happened, seeing how those stats could shift, and how did CPOs potentially prevented certain calls and things like that in the community. While we're on the topic, I apologize if it was brought up during the fire update. Was there any update on when there'll be a report on fireworks?
They don't have any.
Fire was not able to join.
Any other questions from the public or comments? Yes, ma'am. I'll go back to you.
Well, just following up on what Josh said about the mailing about the meeting, is it possible to request that Evergy expand to at least a few blocks beyond the path? Because, those people are certainly affected. We have 100-foot poles.
I can make the request, yes. I don't know that it will happen, but I can make that.
Even if they mail it, it's if their notification process is like ours, there's a lot of renters for a while right now. It's been landlords are gonna get.
Oh, no, they don't do just the property, they do the property and.
And then, even then, I would walk away, but I would.
Yeah, people across the street from me had no idea.
Right.
I will say that has been brought up before, so I can bring it up and see if they do it. I'm not sure that they will, but I will ask.
On the neighborhood night out tomorrow, is the easiest way to learn about, I've seen it on the city website, just to have it look lately. The locations is just to look at the city, or they're listing, or know what neighborhoods are doing.
I don't know if we have a listing of all of them.
We said it was gonna be listed and then I couldn't find it, so.
Your neighborhood may have it. If your neighborhood is not having one, I'm not sure. We have an internal list, just so we know where to go. I don't know if that's public.
Their fire and lobby, like national.
Yeah, so I mean, if they promote it, so Urban League is having one in Mason Grove
Oh,
from 4 to 9, but a lot of neighborhoods just promote it internally to their neighborhood.
fair, okay.
Some of them have some really good ice cream that you get there early enough, you can have some of that.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments from the public to the council member? Seeing none, we'll receive the file without objection. The board agenda, move on to the public agenda. We have no scheduled items. Now we move to item number 8, off agenda items. If any member of the public would like to address the DAB on a topic that's not within the business, please go ahead right now.
Hi, Dan Ranzer, 1107 North Pine Creek. This is concerning Redbud. And several meetings ago, there was a discussion about the AHJ, as they call it, the authority having jurisdiction. And the question was, who has the right of final approval for the Redbud Trail project? And the Kansas Corporation Commission said, well, it's not us, and they sort of pointed the finger at the city, and the city, as I understand it, the city Public Works said, well, it's not us. It's, I think, I don't remember who said it. So nobody's really said, here is the agency, or here's what will finally decide this. Have you had any further information on that, Councilman?
There's a series, so the railroad controls it. And if they say yes, which I believe they've said yes, then the next will be us, which we've said yes. And then I think that's it. But I think it's just the railroad and us. If the railroad would have said no initially, then it wouldn't happen. They have the federal power to say yes.
And so the city council has said yes to this.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other public like to address on the topic? Anyone online? None. I kind of went out of order saying the number 9 because I was confused on number 6 saying Councilmember Andab. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
I can speak for another 4 hours.
Or, all right, we'll receive and file without objection and move on to new business, the Third Street paving.
Bringing up a presentation here, and I'll go through it. And I'm the comments and chief design engineer for the city of Wichita. We'll bring tonight is 2023 Dirt Street paving program. I'm gonna run through this. I'm gonna highlight some things. This item is just to receive a file, but if you have any questions or thoughts or concerns, feel free at the end. There's a slide for that. Open up to the DAB and the public at that point. Give you a little bit of background. City of Wichita has approximately 160 lane miles of dirt street in established neighborhoods. These came about a couple different ways. First of all, when some of these neighborhoods were built, it was not a requirement to pave your road. It was not a requirement to put in water. It was not a requirement to put in sanitary sewer. It was not a requirement to put in sidewalks. It was not a requirement to do drainage. Now, those are all requirements of new subdivisions. When you do those things, you have to go through the process of doing that. Some of these too are newer areas that we over time annex from the county. But those requirements are not always the same. It's still typically paved the roads anymore. I don't know when the county enacted that, but the new stuff typically they're paving the internal roads. But they typically will have lagoons or septics. And they typically don't have water. If they do, it's real water. So just to give you a little bit of background on how we got here. In 2021, the city council approved a new program where the city would start paving some of these streets. I'll go through the 2 criteria here in a little bit, but there's 2 criteria on how we're going to pave them and what order they're going to go. The funding mechanism for this wasn't until in 2023. So there was no funding in the capital improvement program for this work until 2023, and so that's why we're here. 2023, there's $1 million to pay for roughly 10 to 12 different projects. set out for the year 2023. The 10-year allotment, so what we start out with is in 2023, we're about $1 million. It goes up $500,000 through the 10 years of the CIP, which totals $31 million. That only gets us to 20%, 6% of these trees. And that's based on the things I'm gonna break down here in a little bit. And so we're trying to stretch every penny out of that to get as many of these done as we can. So the two criteria for prioritizing projects, the first set of criteria is being within approximately a block of schools. So these streets are treated right now with some dust abatement twice a year, due to the nature of them being on school. The second comes down to prioritizing income. That's based on census block data from the US Census. They have blocks, so you can break down block by block. So you may have section of street here that's done, and you may not do the next block because the two are different as far as income based on census data. So that's how the two are. The first 3 to 4 years, I believe 4, are just the dirt streets around schools, just the top criteria.
Just want to back up just a little bit. I was reading that you use the magnesium for the suppressant. And what I've read on that said it's only good for 90 days, but we're doing it twice a year. Has that been considered that might not be, it's going to be a while before they're all done. So.
Well, I think the major thing is probably budget.
Well,
and
I
how
know they're
often
saying
you do it.
it's 78 whatever now, and that we'll get rid of that if we do this paving effort, but.
Where they came from the 2 years, the twice a year, I can't tell you. And I'm gonna tell you whatever date you threw out, probably depends a lot upon weather. I'm assuming some of that comes down to how much does it rain, how dry it is, how much traffic you're going over. There's a lot of things to play into that.
Yeah, I was looking at some.
Different, how much what rate they're putting it down. And I don't even know exactly how, because I'm not on the maintenance side. I don't know exactly how they're actually installing it. To be quite honest with you, I don't know if there's a knife that's actually going down and that helps try to, or they're mixing with water and actually putting it down.
It's supposed to draw water out of the ambient air to the surface. And that's how it controls the dust, according to the studies that I looked at. But it's pretty much accepted that 90 days is what it's good for. So 6 months
And
is
it's
twice
110
that.
out. It probably didn't last 2 weeks in that. I mean, because there is no water vapor in the air when it's that dry and hot. So how they got to the twice a year and why they did that, I don't know all the details behind that.
And how would I find out?
I can ask our maintenance folks, but I'm guessing some of it came down to what they had budgeted for that.
Thank you.
Yep. So again, like I talked about earlier, we're looking at stretching this funding as far as we can go, because we're looking at 10 years here and we're only getting 26% of these done, and that's looking with these type of items. So our typical is 5 inches asphalt on 5 inches reinforced crushed rock base, or most time what's actually used is crushed concrete. So it's concrete we're reusing from different things that actually gets crushed up and put down. Our standard had been curb and gutter with underground storm sewer. That is not something that we're going to do with this project. Part of that comes down to trying to stretch that dollar as far as we can. The life expectancy based upon this program is somewhere between 15 to 20 years. Hopefully we can get more out of that. We are doing some different things now with our maintenance stuff, even on new infrastructure. When we go out and see some of the different, when they do a mill and overlay, they'll come back next year, do what they don't call preservative seal. The big key to particular asphalt, but in pavement in general, is keeping water out. So some of the things that don't necessarily look great, like sealing, when you have cracks going all the way over the road. Some people don't like the way the road looks, but the best thing you can do is keep water out of that road so you don't end up with freestall and that just going to kaput over one winter if it's cold and you get enough moisture that it keeps just zapping it over and over again. talk about the projects we're gonna talk about tonight. It's Aqua, north of 19th, I believe. We'll get to some pictures. Lilac between Pine or Pike and Morris, and then 10th Street between Pinecrest and the edge of pavement there. And these edge of pavements, that means on the last one anyway, on 10th Street, that's where that is. So that's what I said, it's edge of pavement. Poplar, I think there's actually another street there, and it just doesn't show up here for whatever reason. 15th, Wabash to Washington, Washington 16th to 15th, Washington 15th to 14th. Kind of been put on hold. We have a concept. We hired a consultant to design all these. We have a concept for that piece. We're hoping that we can modify that concept. We're in discussions with the railroad. We're taking the tracks out of the middle of that street. They haven't been used forever for somebody to actually use them. We actually met with railroad today, right after lunch, about it. They formally requested, but it's gonna take, I'm afraid, hopefully we can get to it next year. I'm hoping they can at least give us an idea before we get there so we can modify our approach. So we can be ready as soon as they say, yes, we're gonna pull them. We can build the project at that time. But that's why those have been put on hold. And if you don't know the section, Washington in particular, through one section, I think it's just on one side of the street, but on the other section, there's actually a road that runs down both sides of the street. So the tracks go down right down the middle of the road, and there's dirt road on each side of it. So a couple corridors like that. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. The ones that are highlighted are the ones that have been linked.
We're more or less done with the design. We need to tweaks, we may need to tweak some things, especially if we hear something here that is real concerning. And because we put them on hold, that's part of the reason we're doing some of the 2024, because those three have been put on hold at the top.
The 15th. The 15th is the one, correct.
Yeah, that, the whole group up there. And the 15th is the only one that's in District 1, but they're all right there next to each other. And the main reason for the 15th one, yeah, it doesn't go down Washington, but it ties right into it. So if we're adjusting that, we're gonna want to adjust that. So if we take the tracks out, it would be torn up, or at least partially torn up with that, so. First location here is Poplar, north of 19th. I can't see the name on that. It's Graham. So on the north side is Graham, on the south side, it's 19th Street.
That's just down the street here.
Yeah, which is right over here. Get the picture from Street View here. I can't see this super well. Yeah. So this is an oddity, but there are more of these than I knew about. This is a section of dirt road that has existing curb and gutter. Why they did it, I don't know. I don't know if it's because there was storm in some of these areas. A number of these have storm pipes going underneath them that you can't see. They may have inlets on the street, or they may be on the cross street. I don't know if that's what they did it to try to get as much water to those inlets as they could with some past projects. But this is one of the unique ones that this section does have curb and gutter. We're not gonna tear out the curb and gutter to make an asphalt map. First of all, we have to figure out what we're gonna do with the drainage, because obviously the curb and gutter takes care of it now. There is some existing curb and gutter that's either broken up or settled a little bit, so we're gonna have to replace some of it. So this is your typical cross section of the road. We're building in between the curb and gutter. We'll replace the curb and gutter where we need to. Again, 5 inches asphalt on 5 inches crushed rock base. This is the design sheet. Doesn't probably mean a whole lot to anybody. I just want to put it in there. In this case, particular where we're doing the curb replacement, I believe was right in the center. And I don't know if the trees impacted some. There's a couple large trees there. I don't know if their roots impacted some of that curb and gutter or not, but that's mainly what that's at. So this section here, we are building curb and gutter through this section.
While we're talking about the first one that y'all are gonna be addressing, this being District 1, that's bringing up communication all the time. I see these homes here. Are y'all gonna be communicating in any form to the residents in the area when the project will start, projected timelines.
That's why we came here.
Okay,
To be quite honest with you, to get any feedback from them before we went out and started building stuff.
I didn't know if there was also any plan to just put the signage or anything like that before.
Typically, what we do is we'd have our contractor hand something out prior to them starting work on it. If you think that's necessary, that's what we would do. We put on our contractor to hand something out. Now, typically, on these in the past, we would come to that partly because they were paying for it too. And that's typically the way these would be done in the past, is the neighborhood would be paying for them, adjacent property owners would be paying for them. But we would also have them do driver request forms. But we're not doing that with these. We're not doing driver request forms, we're matching the existing drive if they have it, we're minimizing how far we have to go back. When they were paying for it, we let them determine how wide a drive you want, because it was a direct assessment to the adjacent property. So our contractor would actually, or should have been, having them fill out a driver request form to tell them that information. How wide do you want it? Where do you want it? Sometimes it made sense to move it, the section of Homestead north of 13th Street, be the northwest corner of 13th and Woodlawn. One of the homes we're dealing with in there, it's getting ready. They just started working on it in the last probably couple of weeks. One of the guys was doing a bunch of work to his house, and he was also looking at consolidating. He had a new turnaround drive, and he wanted more of a center located one approach with that project. So again, that's something the contractor on those past projects would do a driver request form too. So they had to talk to the property owner about that.
Right. I remember, yeah, we dealt with that a few months ago with the paid one, but that's why I also bring it up in this unique situation where a lot of these residents weren't put on the spot or don't have that stake in the project, that it could become a surprise to them suddenly and adjusting their schedule and knowing about it. So if there is money.
So these are one block short sections, so I'm not gonna say it's not gonna be bad, but it's not gonna be as bad as some of the others where you had multiple block sections and there was no side streets and some of those type of things. But yeah, I don't have a problem that we make our contractor hand out a notification when they're started. Now, they will typically do that within a week of starting, so give you a whole lot of notice, but anything's better than nothing at that point. These aren't gonna take all that long either.
I was just gonna say, we got a contract with it, but that's what they
The
said.
answer, no, we have not bid any of these projects yet. Okay, second project is Lilac between Morris and Pike. This one's a little bit unique for a couple different reasons. They have some duplexes on the south side, on the west side of Lilac. More or less, they're using a portion of the right of way, a portion of their private property for their on-street parking. We also have some uniqueness here in the fact that this is only 30 feet of right of way. Actually, I'm gonna go back here. Sorry. So obviously your school here is the school in this area. So that's a part of the reason this one, that project right outside is here. So this is actually the juvenile detention facility is the item that they determined to be the school. And again, it comes down to them treating that, and why that is, I don't know the details behind it, but that's the school area to this one. So again, this is at the north end looking south. There's only about 30 feet of right away here. For these poles, and this pole, up the right of way limits, so the road's gonna take up a decent chunk of that. So like on this one, the approaches we have are even minimal, less than what our standard is gonna be about 7 feet is what we're gonna try and see how it works. And some of these are gonna be, we're gonna try some different things and see how it works, and we may adjust it in the future. Typically, when we've done these asphalt mats, I mentioned Homestead, but even Seaton in that same area, we put a 1 foot asphalt shoulder on both sides. Again, we're trying to stretch it as far as we can, so we don't take something that spends a considerable amount of money. But if this helps hold that together, typically your issues with asphalt is that edge is not confined, will start to bust off. And once that starts happening, it just starts eating away as you go. So we're probably gonna try some asphalt shoulder or rock shoulders on some of these to see how much lifespan that's gonna give us relative to locations we don't. And we make some adjustments in the future too, after we try some different things. So these do show the 1 foot rock shoulder on the outside of the actual pavement. 12-foot lanes, 1 foot rock shoulder on each side, 5 inches asphalt, 5 inches drop base, some drainage swells on each side to get rid of the drainage. This is at the south end, so again, this is the area right here where that duplexes have their parking, so we're gonna pave up to the right of way line through that area. And the main thing is, we didn't want to do nothing in this area and, or even the rock. Thinking something, anything here more south would try to help build up with that, because they're gonna be pulling off that considerable number of times to actually use it as their parking.
Another little question about this, the dirt roads that I've been on, and admittedly, the ones I've been on are on the west side, but they don't have a crown to them to speak of. I noticed because I ride a motorcycle. And the dirt roads just, they get more hollowed out than crowned. And is this gonna involve hauling in material, you think, or are they gonna
Absolutely.
cut down the
No, no,
outside
no.
edges?
No, absolutely not. And part of the reason is we're putting material on top.
Mhm,
So more or less what we're doing is taking 10 inches out. Now, in the center, if you're saying that there isn't a crown there
mhm,
and our street will have a crown, you may not end up with 10 inches in the center, maybe end up with 8.
mhm.
Because we're taking 10 inches out farther where it's supposed to be crowned.
It's supposed to be crowned, right?
It's all intended to be crowned. That's the way they're all set up. It would be that they would have a crown over time, school buses, trash trucks, things like that. And they're just not.
So you may be
The
pulling
grading-
some material up to get below your base thing. You may pull some material up from the outside.
I just say you're gonna take less out of the center when we take it out, because more or less what you're doing is you're hogging out 10 inches of
Okay.
material. You put those 10 inches back
So you
in.
just take
And
less
that
out of
location in the
it.
center, if it is crowned, it's just gonna be less, it's gonna be 8 inches. Here's the north end. This one I think only has 1 or 2 drives on it, excluding the parking there for the duplexes down at the south end. We're probably gonna try some different things over time with how we're tying into these. A lot of these are set up to have 31 or 29 back-to-back terminator streets. So the existing return that comes around and ties into the dirt streets is wider than we are, so we're having to taper down. How we make that taper work, it's probably something we'll have to play around with a little bit and see what works and see what doesn't, and make sure. Even if it does work, is it becoming an issue with people running it over or something like that? Because we've had those in the past where it didn't seem to be an issue, but they're not seeing how much the road narrows, they're not taking that into account when they're turning the trailer and stuff. We'll take a look at that as we move forward with these, as they keep moving forward. 10th Street. School is right down here. So the section we're doing right here is 10th Street west of Pinecrest. This section's here. Street view of it. We are looking at replacing this pipe, getting rid of this. I know I said we wouldn't do any drainage. We are gonna make some recommendations here and there to do some different things. I don't know how this ever got approved or why this was there. It looks like something somebody built over time, like almost when the neighbors came out and built it. I'm not saying it happened, so if you live in that neighborhood or that's your house, I'm not trying to put you. I'm just saying it doesn't look. This one will not have a crown. Actually, everything will drain over to this ditch. Because there's already a well defined ditch here. We just grade everything to that ditch. Everything will drain away from the existing houses on that side.
I have a question, does 10th Street not tends to go through because of drainage concerns right there? Connecting through to Harding?
Actually, what you see,
Seen
and
on,
I'll show you right here, there's a big box structure that goes through right here.
Okay, all right, yeah.
How far that pond comes through here and it's significant. So again, it's just kind of showing what I'm talking about. This is all straight grading crossed over to that ditch. our standard driveway approach is going to be only go back 7 feet. So you'll have your wings, and then a few feet beyond that is where we're proposing to end these on all these projects, unless we have right-of-way issues where we can't go back that far. Just trying to get as much done with this money as we can. We're trying to limit how far we go back. Obviously, adjacent property owners, if they want, they can have our contractor do anything behind where we're stopping and even on private property. And if we run into that issue a bunch, we may have to consider what we do if there's a way to allow special accessibility in the future. We have not done that at this point. It would be some type of petition or some type of mechanism in that way. But I don't know if they could do a petition for one property for driveway. We'd have to talk to our law department about the legality of that, but that would be the intent of, we're trying to minimize how much we do on the drives. So there's just a design section. Again, you can see the road ends right here. This is the ditch. We are replacing this pipe and putting curb inlet, more standard curb inlets here. So this picks up all this drainage, takes it underground. Kind of does it now, but if somebody gets off the road a little bit or gets over close to it, it's a funky thing. So this one does have a handful of drives. It shows it's actually going to property line. This is one of the things we need to dress up with these plans. We're only going back 7 feet. That's the reason for that. Either for grading reasons or because of pavement condition. We have to be able to tie into something. It's complete shambles. We gotta be able to tie into something else. So it has to be good pavement we're gonna tie into. Or if no pavement, then it really doesn't matter. Just upgrade. So looking at starting construction of these this fall. And with that, I recommend actions received and file. Students' thoughts, concerns.
And you might know this as well, but did the city of Wichita apply for the Safe Streets and Roads Act or the grants? That was due July 10th. It's part of the infrastructure bill, but it's for cities. And it had two aspects. One was safety, but everything that you have here falls under that part of it. So I didn't know like if the city has applied for the grants, because this was also brought up at the county level, is that there's a lot of grants being left on the table that we would, even at a city level, be or would apply to us.
I'm not sure exactly what grant you're talking about. The one through WAMPO that we're currently working on, they have to actually come up with a plan and get the plan approved by the state before we can actually apply for some of the safety fundings on that end. Which is WAMPO is the Metro Regional Planning Organization
Right.
for the metro area. I'm not sure how many of these would actually qualify for safety.
I mean, well, you have it all tiered out, like you already talked about, you're doing next to schools and how the dust and, I mean, there's.
That's
danger.
typically not what they think about safety when you come to transportation. Again, I have not read through the exact grant you're talking about. Typically, when they're talking about safety on the transportation side, it's accidents, it's rates of accidents, it's pedestrian fatalities, bicycle fatalities, it's things like that, not necessarily dust mitigation.
Okay, I just don't want to leave money on the table or like if anyone even knew about it. I guess that's the thing. So, because it all came from the infrastructure bill.
We've looked through a number of different times. You have to be a little bit strategic, otherwise trying to find the staff or ability to hire somebody else. In most of these, depending on how much you're going after, you almost need somebody, and a lot of these private consulting companies have somebody that used to work for the agency that's actually putting it out. And if you want a shot, if it's very competitive, you almost need somebody that knows what exactly they're looking for. We put one together for, we put one together for the North Junction, didn't get it the first time. And you talk about safety and the congestion, I mean, for Wichita, that's not as congested as you're gonna get. I know Wichita thinks there's a lot of congested. I don't know where you travel, because anywhere I went, what we got here is nothing, but that didn't get it the first time.
Okay, you just brought up money, and I just was curious. if there were grants that were applied for.
The other thing is, part of it is, and so we get money through WAMPO, we actually let our own projects, City of Wichita does, we oversee the construction of our own projects with federal money in them. We have to get approved every 3 years through KDOT. There's some other criteria to move on with that, which makes it not as good as just, here's the money, go do with it you want. It's, you have to check off this box, check off this box, you're going through a lot more paperwork. Buy America is becoming trickier and trickier. It used to just be steel, and anything that you coated with steel had to be done in America. Now it's any manufactured product. And I'm not sure what the definition of manufactured product is yet. So there's some other requirements that if you're not getting a decent amount, sometimes it's not worth the little bit extra you get, depending on where you're playing.
Well, we're relevant to this topic. I was just curious on the expected useful life. When you're discussing maintenance, does that prioritization formula come into effect at all in prioritizing maintenance as well, or is that more just on the need in the streets?
So they have a model, for lack of a better term, it's a spreadsheet or group of spreadsheets that they look at what condition it's in. That's how they come up with the OP3 program.
And you also brought up on I think you said on the 10th Street location, there could be potential chance, and maybe on some of the others, of a special assessment or of a small special assessment on one of the areas or things like that.
If they wanted to come back, if we got a bunch of requests for something about driveways, and I can't afford $1,000 to have them do the rest of my driveway, but if I could spread that over 5 years, I may be able to do it. That's where I would see us potentially looking into the possibility of doing that.
That's what I
So
would-
not directly assessing anybody for something they didn't want. It would be something they would be driving by asking us questions if it was possible. And we'd have to dig into that.
Yeah, I was concerned if y'all did this project and then, especially if you're focusing on socioeconomically disadvantaged neighborhoods, and then say, hey, here's a special assessment on top of that. Any questions or comments on this from the public or DAB members online? If we have heard from you, I apologize.
I appreciate that you define how you're using the census data to define disadvantaged neighborhoods, which I think is common. I'm curious if you have data on like where most of those paved roads lie, like which districts hold the majority of the roads that need to be paved. You know that off the top of your head.
I'll say 1, 3, and 4.
But which one has the highest? I knew 1, 3, and 4 when you use that data, right? Because the census data tells us that those are the most disadvantaged.
I
for
can't
this.
say.
Okay.
They have the tire list in the program telling you when each one of them is, so they may be able to tell you our maintenance folks. So I have the 10-year list here with me, but I don't have the 40-year list. So I don't have all of them spelled out, but those are by far the ones that are the highest.
I think the 40-year list is District 6 and District 4.
Perfect. Thank you. Who was on that? I appreciate it.
DAB members online, questions or comments? Members of the public, questions or comments? I know this is a receipt. Oh, sorry, I didn't see it now.
Yeah, I just have one more question. I don't think you're gonna want this, but you're getting it anyway. Are you familiar with the product, for lack of a better term, Glassfault? Okay. It's actually been used since the 1970s, but there's more and more data being accumulated on it, and New York City has put it to good use. But it's putting waste glass into asphalt and making it a certain percentage, like up to 15% of the product. And different places have implemented in different ways. And I just wondered if there's some avenue that we're talking about stretching the dollar here. If there's some avenue we could take to address the possibility of having our folks look at this kind of thing and see where we can incorporate whatever is going to be required to move in that direction. Because then they last a lot longer than 15 to 20 years. That's number one. Number two is the maintenance we commented about. Some engineers are using, it's a peculiar chemistry that they go out and pour over just these straight asphalt things that literally heals the little cracks that are caused by things like okay, there was water in the cracks, then everything froze and it got bigger and da, 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 da. But rather than having to go and put another half-inch paving across the top of it or something, they put this stuff and it literally, it chemically brings the stuff back together again. But that has to be done every 2 or 3 years. So these are.
That's exactly what our program does. And I don't know how much of the first part of the report I gave you, but there's about 10 different things that they're doing right now. And that's to take that into consideration.
Okay.
Because again, the priority number one is keeping the water out of the pavement. That will make that pavement last long. So they'll have crack seals. They'll come back and do some micros. They'll come back and do some patching. They have a whole program, and it's not just in the past, for whatever reason, I can't tell you all the history of it. We did a lot more mill and overlays, which for the streets that got done, they're great, but they're awful expensive, and you didn't get near as many of them as you probably should have. So when they started using the system they're using now, it's broken down to a lot, and the number of a lot of different categories. The number of mill and overlays we do are significantly down. It's great for those areas you can do a mill and overlay. It brings the structural number back up significantly, but it's awful expensive to use. On the glass grid, I haven't, glass.
There's Glass Creek too, but the glass small piece, but
I haven't heard of that.
it has the longest.
I will tell you that again, like I mentioned, a rock typically isn't rock, it's crushed concrete to use left over from some other project, whether that be street projects, whether that be taking down grain bins, silos, whatever it may be. That's using crushed concrete, and it works really well in this area. The other part of it is our asphalt already includes what's called RAP, which is recycled asphalt in it. And depending on which section you're talking about, whether it's surface course or base course, there's different parameters of how much you can use. Obviously, in the base, there's more you can use
Yeah.
to try to bring down that cost, and so you don't end up with that waste just going somewhere else.
That is the one thing you mentioned there that concerns me is that we're not going to do anything in this to deal with the water. You know, we're not. Is that a potential worry that we're not dealing with the water, that we're making sure, you know, the one that's not crowned, we're taking care of the water.
The curb and gutter one, no, it's not working. It's got curb and gutter on. The other ones, particular 10th Street, no, because it's all gonna go down the ditch. That I'm not
And
worried
that's,
about. Lilac. Let's see. And that's why we're gonna have to evaluate this as we go. Because if these only last 5 years, then we have another discussion we maybe didn't have.
Any other questions, comments from DAB members?
This is just out of curiosity. If it's not like for safety reasons, is choosing to prioritize neighborhoods where schools are located, what's the rationale behind that? Is it school buses?
No, I think it was for the same reason they're treating it now, to try to have some dust mitigation.
Got it.
And again, I'm not saying that's not a safety concern from the
Yes.
city. It's not typically something that would go into a grant for transportation safety type items.
Right. I was just curious because I think it's important to mobilize the opinion about why that's being prioritized versus maybe some other residents feeling like their neighborhood should be prioritized.
The hardest one is when you have one block here, and you're gonna do this one in
Yep.
23 or
Mhm.
25. This one doesn't get done until 28.
I noticed that. yeah.
That's where we get the real heartburn from people
Thank you for
in this
explaining.
program, yeah.
Any other questions or comments? I know this is receiver file, but I feel like it's looking out for District 1 and being by the book and being on record. I would like to make a staff recommended motion that the city and or the contractor will notify either with mail, door hanger, or some other form of communications, any residences with direct drive access to the streets being affected by this. Just so that we're on the record for District 1 recommending that. I'd like to make that motion. Take a second. All right, for the second, any discussion on this motion? And then we'll take a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Any
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? Sorry, It's in pause. Confirming that's unanimous, correct, online? All right, I'm gonna take that as a. Thank you. With that, we'll also receive and file without objection the report and then make a motion to adjourn. Second, without objection. We are. I mean,